didn't get much sleep last night. I couldn't stop thinking about kissing you.
Good morning. Kim, hi. Good morning, Kimmy.
We are not thriving. True, our people live, but our culture is dying.
It's 1 o'clock. I better work fast if I'm gonna help find Presto Changeo.
My name's Susie. What's yours?
Tommy.
Hi, Tommy. Want me to show you our new house?
But what about your sucker?
Sucker?
Who's this guy?
I have no idea. Do you, Cecil?
The hard part was battling myself, trying to get a job I already had. By the time we got to season 6, I had a record deal with Capitol Records and my rock band Subject to Change. And I was about to go on tour. We were going to open for a black ska band called Fishbone. And I was engaged to the drummer, and I was ready to get out of there. Kadeem was doing movies. Jasmine was doing Harlem Nights. Like, we all couldn't wait to go to the next step. What we didn't realize was we ain't Saved by the Bell. We ain't those white shows, and the world wasn't waiting for us like that. We couldn't wait because we thought, hey, we're the #2 show in America. There's no way everybody can't wait to see us. And nobody gave it. And you saw how that show ended, with a whimper, not a bang. And I think it was a real reality check for everybody.
What happens when you go from being one of television's most beloved stars to having nothing left but a futon and a plant in a tiny Hollywood apartment? What happens when the industry that made you famous turns its back on you, leaving you broke, heartbroken, and fighting just to survive? This is the story of Cree Summer, the voice behind your childhood, the face of groundbreaking television, and the woman who discovered that fame doesn't shield you from life's cruelest blows.
Yeah, I do voice boys. I do a cartoon called Proud Family, and I'm a little boy named Peebo on that.
Her journey from the heights of Hollywood success to rock bottom will shock you, inspire you, and remind you that sometimes losing everything is the only way to find yourself. Born into a world of creativity and rebellion, Cree Summer's path to stardom began with pure nepotism, and she's never been ashamed to admit it. I'm a Nepo baby, she confesses without shame.
Here's Don Franks. Let's give him a little Hollywood. Yeah, we'll listen to his kid if it means anything. And it turns out I was okay.
Good.
I don't even know if I was really good at the time, but I think opportunity and consistency and being persistent eventually will become good.
Her father, Don Franks, was a legendary voice actor in Canada who collected vintage Harley-Davidsons and raised Model T Fords, a man who lived life on his own terms and passed that rebellious spirit to his daughter.
Completely 100% by nepotism. My father was a huge voiceover man in Toronto. I love that we say if it goes down, because I feel like it's going down. Like right now, I feel like it is going down. Well, my father is a rambler. He was a real motorhead. He collected vintage cars and antique motorcycles.
But Don Franks wasn't just unconventional. He was revolutionary. He called himself Iron Buffalo, and in the 1960s, he and Cree's mother dropped out of society completely. They went to live on a reservation with the Plains Cree Indians in Saskatchewan called Red Pheasant, staying for 6.5 years before becoming nomadic, living in a school bus, horse stables, abandoned boxcars on railway tracks, and teepees.
And those old clothes just, if you're lucky, they don't fit after a while. But I lived on an Indian reservation for the first 7 years of my life. And then we lived nomadically in a school bus. And I just had a trunk.
Money was scarce because nobody was working real jobs. But Don turned poverty into adventure. When they'd pull up to gas stations with no money, he'd say, "Watch your daddy get gas, Summer." Then he'd saunter up barefoot with 2 braids and convince station owners to let him paint their signs in exchange for gas and dinner invitations. His beautifully decorated school bus became his portfolio, and his daughter watched him turn every crisis into an opportunity. This wild upbringing would shape everything about how Cree approached life, including, decades later, what she needed from romantic partners.
Sex. It took me years to realize you don't have to be satisfied with mediocre sex, and you don't have to pretend something's good that isn't.
From the time she could barely walk, Cree was sleeping on recording studio floors, absorbing the craft that would define her life. Her education was sporadic at best. She attended very little school because her father preferred bringing her to work.
With him, I used to watch him on the mic and just dream that one day it would be my shot. And then he was auditioning for Inspector Gadget, and He introduced the casting director to me and I got to audition.
This unconventional upbringing would later leave her feeling insecure about her intelligence, but it gave her something invaluable: the fearlessness to walk into any room and demand what she wanted. As just 11 years old, Cree walked into an Inspector Gadget audition with the kind of confidence that only children possess. After her audition, she didn't wait for the results. She simply thanked them for giving her the job she hadn't yet received. That bold move launched her into a career that would span decades and touch millions of lives.
He's not a leprechaun. He's a mad agent. I've got to warn Uncle Gadget.
But success at such a young age comes with a price nobody talks about. In 1987, at just 17 years old, Cree landed the role that would change everything: Freddie Brooks on A Different World.
I can barely make it out. I guess it's because the Little Dipper has 3 stars brighter than the 4th magnitude.
The audition process was brutal. 11 callbacks, sleeping in the same apartment as her competition, and performing comedy routines with scripts from tragic plays. But here's where the story gets deliciously messy.
I became a very different person when I was forced to work on my own, and especially when I got on Different World and all of a sudden I was working on that level.
Debbie Allen, the show's powerhouse director, had her eye on a British dancer she'd worked with before.
Debbie came to me. One of the girls that was auditioning was from England and was a dancer that Debbie had worked with. And I could tell behind the scenes she was really pushing for this chick.
This woman needed somewhere to stay in Los Angeles, and Debbie asked Cree if she could crash at her tiny Hollywood apartment.
And Debbie said, well, you have an apartment. Is it okay if she stays with you?
Can you imagine? Cree was unknowingly housing her competition, both women preparing for the audition of their lives under the same roof. This chick is in my apartment, Cree recalls with disbelief.
I'm in one room, she's in another room, and we're both preparing for the audition of our lives.
The awkwardness was unbearable, but Cree couldn't say no to Miss Debbie Allen. When audition day arrived, Cree could hear the other girls going in with no reaction from the casting directors. Dead silence. That's when she knew she had to do something desperate. She transformed a scene from A Raisin in the Sun into comedy gold with an improvised bathroom dance that had casting directors in tears of laughter.
So I did this whole pee dance. 2 minutes of jumping around and acting like a fool, and they started cracking up.
Her British roommate flew back to England empty-handed. The show became a cultural phenomenon, but behind the scenes, Cree and her co-star Charlie were living on borrowed time. The network kept them dangling like puppets, no full contracts, just 3 episodes at a time, constantly wondering if they'd be written off the show. Do you know how stressful that is? She says, still feeling the anxiety decades later. For 6 seasons, Cree lived in what she called Black Camelot.
Here's your contract, welcome to the show. We got 3 episodes, and if we were good, we could get another 3. See how stressful that is?
A world where she fell in love with co-star Kadeem Hardison, learned from legends like Debbie Allen, and became part of television history. Her relationship with Kadeem was the stuff of teenage dreams, riding motorcycles together, hunting down rare comic books, living out her childhood fantasy of being Fonzie and Pinky Tuscadero from Happy Days.
From Different World, well, I met my first boyfriend on Different World. My first boyfriend was Kadeem Hardison, and he was the best first boyfriend you could ever have. We used to ride motorcycles together. There's a funny story, because when I was growing up and I saw Happy Days.
But the stress was overwhelming, especially during those early years when Jasmine Guy became her guardian angel, coaching her through every scene and ensuring she survived in the cutthroat world of television.
Love affair with Jasmine Guy, who took one look at me and decided we were going to be sisters. And she took care of me.
Jasmine would stop her mid-scene. Do you know you're saying that line the same way every time? It was tough love that elevated Cree's performance and probably saved her job.
Friends have saved me. My friends are the reason I still have a career.
The show wasn't all harmony behind the scenes. During the filming of the controversial Mammy Dearest episode, where Cree appeared in full blackface as the character Topsy, the entire cast was furious. We were pissed. She admits, the cast was furious, man. While other actors got to perform beautiful poetry and African dances, Cree was stuck portraying one of the most problematic stereotypes in American history.
I would like to perform a selection from For Colored Girls Who Have Considered Suicide When the Rainbow Is Enough.
As a light-skinned black woman, she felt especially vulnerable. Here's this yellow girl doing this thing. Are they going to think I'm an idiot? The episode became beloved in retrospect, but filming it was traumatic for the young actress who didn't yet understand its historical importance. Then came the wake-up call that changed everything. By the final season, Cree was ready to move on. She had signed a record deal with Capitol Records for her rock band Subject to Change, was engaged to the drummer, and was about to tour opening for Fishbone.
Season 6, I had a record deal with Capitol Records and my rock band Subject to Change, and I was about to go on tour. We were going to open for a black ska band called Fishbone.
Like her castmates, she believed that success on a different world guaranteed a golden future in Hollywood. But there's a darker reason why A Different World ended, one that reveals the ugly politics behind the scenes. The show's decline wasn't just about ratings or creative differences. Lisa Bonet's departure after the first season had already shaken the foundation. But what really killed the show was the cast's growing ambitions conflicting with network expectations. Kadeem was doing movies, Jasmine was pursuing film roles in Harlem Nights, and everyone thought they were too big for television.
The network executives weren't having it. They watched their young black stars get Hollywood egos and decided to teach them a lesson about their place in the industry. Behind closed doors, NBC was already planning the show's demise, while the cast remained oblivious, living in their bubble of success. Cree admits the truth. We all couldn't wait to go to the next step. What we didn't realize was we ain't Saved by the Bell. We ain't those white shows. The industry that had celebrated them as groundbreaking was about to show them exactly how expendable they really were. When the show ended, it wasn't with the fanfare of a cultural phenomenon. It died with a whimper, not a bang, as Cree puts it. The harsh reality hit like a sledgehammer. Nobody gave a damn. While white sitcom stars transitioned seamlessly to new projects, the cast of A Different World discovered that Hollywood had different rules for them. Cree went on tour for a year and a half, living her rock star dreams and believing everything would work out. But when she returned to Los Angeles, the music stopped. No agents would represent her, no auditions came her way. The phone simply stopped ringing. Then her personal life began to crumble. Fish, her fiancé and the drummer she'd pinned her future on, left her. Suddenly, she was alone in Hollywood. No boyfriend, no career prospects, no safety net. The money from A Different World was running out, and she found herself staring at an uncertain future from her tiny apartment with nothing but a futon, a plant, and a boombox. The industry had shown its true face. While their white counterparts from other NBC sitcoms were being handed new shows and movie deals, the A Different World cast discovered they were expendable. The same executives who had praised them as groundbreaking pioneers suddenly acted like they'd never heard of them. We thought, hey, we're the #2 show in America. There's no way everybody can't wait to see us, Cree remembers bitterly. And nobody gave a damn. The painful truth was, their success hadn't translated into industry respect. They were still seen as replaceable black actors who should be grateful for whatever crumbs they were thrown. This is where most Hollywood stories would end in tragedy, but Cree's story took an unexpected turn. Gina Prince Blythewood, who had been a writer on A Different World, became Cree's savior. Out of the blue, Gina called with an opportunity, a role on Sweet Justice, starring Cicely Tyson and Melissa Gilbert. Not only did she offer Cree the chance to audition, she took her straight to the network, bypassing the usual barriers that had been keeping her out of work. She just gave it to me, Cree recalls with profound gratitude. That single phone call rescued her from what could have been a devastating spiral into obscurity. But the lesson was clear. In Hollywood, talent isn't enough. Success isn't guaranteed, and the industry that lifts you up
can just as easily forget you exist. The experience transformed Cree's approach to her career. She began taking voice acting more seriously, eventually becoming one of the most recognizable voices in animation. She voiced Susie Carmichael on Rugrats.
Hi, my name's Susie. What's yours? Tommy. Hi, Tommy. Want me to show you our new house?
Notably the first Black character in animation who actually looked and sounded authentically Black, complete with barrettes, braids, and attitude. She became Princess Kida in Atlantis, the Lost Empire.
My father said it called my mother to it. I never saw her again.
Technically the first Black Disney princess, though Disney has never acknowledged this groundbreaking achievement.
They don't give me no love for that, she says with justified frustration. The film bombed at the box office, but those who know consider it a hidden gem. If you know about Atlantis, you're automatically cool in certain circles. But there's Hollywood tea brewing beneath the surface of her voice acting success. While Cree was grateful for the steady work, she watched as her former A Different World castmates struggled with their own post-show careers. The industry that had once celebrated them as groundbreaking had moved on to newer, younger faces, leaving an entire generation of Black actors fighting for scraps. Yet even with the rebuilt career, life wasn't finished testing her. Years later, as a single mother of 3 daughters, Cree faced another devastating blow when the father of her children left. Once again, she was alone, scared, and financially struggling to support her family. The bills were piling up, the voice work wasn't enough to cover everything, and she was spiraling into despair. But here's where Hollywood friendships prove their worth, and where the industry gossip gets interesting. Pamela Adlon, a fellow voice actress she'd worked with for over 2 decades, threw her a lifeline. Pamela, who was creating better things, insisted Cree audition for the show despite Cree's protest that she hadn't been on camera in 25 years. The casting director, Flea, had to practically drag her to the audition.
I'm taking care of the boys alone and his mama. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to get back to Thailand to finish the film.
I said no thanks. I hadn't been on camera in 25 years. I was also deep in heartbreak. I didn't feel like I could get out of bed, let alone come audition for something. When Flea called back with Pamela's message, "Pam says you have to audition," Cree knew she had no choice. But the audition was a complete disaster. She was going through menopause, drenched in hot flash sweat like Albert Brooks in broadcast news, and convinced she'd blown her only chance. The industry loves a good comeback story, and Pamela saw potential where others saw failure. What started as a small role grew into something beautiful, with the show incorporating Cree's real-life heartbreak into storylines that felt authentically painful and raw. What started as a small role grew into something beautiful. The show incorporated Cree's real-life breakup into storylines, and eventually, Pamela asked if she wanted to write for the show. Cree chose writing, and suddenly found herself in the writer's room of one of America's most acclaimed series. But this comeback came with its own challenges. During the Better Things years, Cree was dealing with untreated Graves' disease, which had affected her eyes and left her feeling deeply insecure about her appearance. She was overweight from emotional eating, struggling with vanity issues she didn't even know she had, and constantly adjusting her clothes on camera. The disease made her eyes appear bulging, very Feldman, very Marty Feldman, as she puts it, and she was mortified to be seen. Yet this period of physical and emotional vulnerability taught her the most important lesson of her career. I'm not what I look like, and my acting doesn't have anything to do with what I look like. As of 2025, Cree Summer's estimated net worth is approximately $4 million, built through decades of voice acting work, television appearances, and writing. While this represents financial stability, it's a fraction of what many of her contemporaries from major network television have achieved. But here's where her story takes an unexpected turn, one that reveals the most surprising chapter of her life. At 55, Cree Summer is having the best sex of her life.
And now in my 50s, I just don't care anymore. And I'm feeling things I've never felt before and trying things I've never felt before.
While many women her age complain about declining libido and vanishing desire, Cree is experiencing the opposite. Sexual awakening that's both liberating and revolutionary.
I don't know what menopause has done for me. I actually got skinnier and wanted to everything. It's so bizarre.
It's so bizarre. My girlfriends are like, F you. But yeah, menopause has just set me on fire. This isn't just about hormones. It's about freedom.
There's a freedom now that I never had not even in my 40s.
For the first time in her life, Cree doesn't care about perfection. She's discovered she likes slow, intense eye contact, being seen deeply by a partner, and surprisingly, being dominated in ways she never expected. I never knew I would like something like that, she says about exploring submission and control in the bedroom. But there's a catch that reveals Hollywood's harsh realities about aging women. Despite feeling more beautiful and sexually confident than ever before, Cree rarely gets asked out on. I don't get asked out on a lot of dates. I never get asked out on dates, she confesses. It's weird to not be seen as much. You do become a little more invisible the older you get as a woman. The men who do approach her are always significantly younger, usually in their 30s, while men her age ignore her completely. Even the father of her children was 16 years younger. Nothing wrong with younger men, she laughs, very energetic and ready to go. But here's the most shocking revelation. Despite being sexually liberated and confident, Cree has never, not once in 55 years, approached a man or asked anyone out. Ever. I don't approach anybody. She admits, I've never done that before, ever. I don't think I've ever approached a man. I've never asked a man out. This passivity in dating has left her at the mercy of whoever is brave enough to approach her, leading to what she calls choosing partners purely out of loneliness. Her romantic struggles aren't just about age or opportunity. They're rooted in something deeper that traces back to her wild childhood with Iron Buffalo. Watching her father turn every crisis into an adventure created a specific template for what she finds attractive in men. When they'd run out of gas or money, Don would get excited and say, "What are we gonna do? This is great. How are we gonna get out of this one?" His confidence in the face of uncertainty was magnetic, and it shaped what Cree would need from romantic partners decades later.
Well, let's start with my old man, my father. Mistakes were a thing to go, what's gonna happen? And I loved that as a girl. I never felt like